In this video, I review Digital Taxidermy's Proxigenator's Fabricatum. Before we get into today's video, just want to share what the GGGG is for this month. Every month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month, May of 2021, we have tons of them. So go check them out at the Patreon link in the descriptions below. And I will tell you right now that two of those GGGGs are the $50 pledges for this Kickstarter. So two of my Patreon supporters will be chosen by Bob to receive the STL files for both the buildings and for the vehicles. That draw is going to be happening Sunday, May 30th. And if it's past May, go ahead and check out my Patreon page to see what the current GGGGs are. So Digital Taxidermy was kind enough to send me the STL files, the preview files for this Kickstarter that they have, and in the past they have done fantasy, and they're famous for using the leftover spools from 3D prints and repurposing them for buildings and whatnot, both for fantasy terrain as well as sci-fi terrain. And this kit is coming out just in time for Stargrave, or you can use this terrain for any of your favorite sci-fi skirmish games. I plan to use it not only for Stargrave, but also for Starbreach. And if you want to check out my video review on Starbreach, go ahead and click here. One of my favorite sci-fi skirmish games. What I really like about this set is that they come with these vehicles, which I think looks awesome. I painted them according to sort of a construction theme, but this makes for great scatter terrain around the battle board, and they can be objectives, or you can make it so that your faction can actually use the vehicles for some purpose, to either break down a wall or to maybe build some housing, since there's a housing shortage right now. Anything, but these are the first STL files that I've seen that has somewhat futuristic versions, although I would say that this crane looks pretty contemporary, but some of these other ones definitely looks more sci-fi in nature. And you can also swap out all of these tops for the bottoms, so they are interchangeable. I didn't print out the dump truck. That was the other file that they sent me. I only had enough time to print out these four, but I think they look really cool, and I'm definitely going to be using them as objectives in my future games. Also, we do have these buildings. All of them did fit onto my Prusa MK3S, except for this huge thing. Wouldn't fit height-wise, but this did fit on my Ender 5 Plus, and was able to print this out on one piece. If you have a smaller print build than that, then you are able to slice these or just shrink them down so that they fit in your build plate. Now, I will say with some of these, for example, this piece here, I wish I would have printed it out, so make sure that you check the scale of these before you print to get it to where you want. I am happy with how big this one is. These tanks look really good, as well as this piece over here. You can opt to either have this sphere down here at the bottom, or you can stick it on top. Either way, I like it at the bottom because I can fit my miniatures on top and use it as a platform. But I think I will print out actually a little bit larger piece, just because I like this platform, but I want to be able to fit a little bit more on there. And then this one also, I probably would have printed out larger, just to be able to fit more here on this platform and to make it a little bit larger scale. But of course, you can do all of that on your own. Whatever size that they provide you, you can always scale. Also, at the end of the video, I do have a painting tutorial of how I painted. And this time around, rather than doing sort of my go-to dry brushing with black undercoat, silver and rust color, this time I wanted to experiment a little bit and see what especially the vehicles would look like using my salt method. And I've done that a couple of times, but if you don't know how to do that, this tutorial will show you how to use salt and hairspray in order to create these rust effects, you're basically using salt as a mask to spray on top of that mask in order to maintain some of these rust effects. So if you're interested in that, check out the end of the video. Otherwise, these were super easy to paint up, quick to paint up, and I do like the results. I tend to like my terrain to look worn out, rusted out, old, and not sort of clean and new. But of course you can paint it that way if you want, but if you want effects, you can use my tutorial here. I did just use a wash to put streaks on here and make it look old, along with the salt that I used to rust out the bottom parts of this tank. But I think this tank turned out really good, and I experimented with different colors. I think I really like the green color here. It sort of gives it that military look, along with the gold color, the yellow I mean, and that makes it look pretty sharp, so that looks really cool. But you can pick whatever color scheme that you want, and at the end of the day, these pieces are going to be great in creating a lot of terrain, scattered terrain that are going to be on your board. So let's go ahead and go over to the computer now, and I'll walk you through the Kickstarter and all the options that are available. So here's the Kickstarter page. You can see the video if you want. And again, this ends on June 13th. So check out all these different kinds of buildings that they have. And then here are the vehicles. They also came out with the damaged version of the vehicles, which would have worked out well with my worn and rusted look. So you'll have both of those versions available. And then these are the stretch goals that are going to unlock over the course of the campaign. And then we have a couple of helpful and funny videos. Digital Taxidermy always produces really funny videos, so make sure you watch those. And you can see them swapping out the different tops for the bottoms of these vehicles. And then here are some examples. They have versions that have more greeblies on them. So the one I printed out is relatively plain, but the Greebly Plus version has more stuff and more details on them. And as always, the files that I received are going to be fixed upon and modified, so your version might be different than what I am showing you. Yeah, here's the extra Greebly version. Like I mentioned before, I think the vehicles are definitely a selling point for this Kickstarter, and I'm glad that it wasn't just buildings. And then you have all of these different building options, and they're just saying that it is support free, which definitely is the case. I didn't have to have any supports placed on the prints that I made, and I do print at 2mm height to get the details that I receive, which I think is plenty good for terrain. And they are hollow, so that's going to save you quite a bit of money on your PLA costs. You can also download free files if you want to test it out. Also, if you do want to go to their website, you can purchase some of their previous files. They've done a number of Kickstarters, so make sure you check that out. But in terms of options here, what we have is the $22 pledge, which gives you just the vehicles. For $36, you are getting the buildings, including the ones with extra greeblies on them, so you have two versions of each building. And then here is what most people are getting, which is the industrial. That is $50 US for all of the buildings and the vehicles. You're receiving also the stretch goals. This is to receive a license to be able to print and sell these files. And then here is the Super Ultimate Mega Bundle if you want to get all of their previous Kickstarters all in one. And that's going to be about $350, but you're getting a ton of stuff. If you want to check out each individual one, you can over on their website. And it looks like you will be receiving the STL files next month in July of 2021. So relatively quick turnaround for them to be able to deliver the files. Again, I have the preview files and they looked plenty good on my end, didn't need a lot of fixing, so that is good. And Digital Taxidermy has always done a good job delivering those files on time. So there you have it. That is Digital Taxidermy's Proxigenator's Fabricatum, which I can't always say correctly, but this is a really cool Kickstarter, so make sure you jump on board. And for those of you who are interested in pledging but are wondering if you're going to be one of the Patreon supporters that's going to be picked by Bob, go ahead and pledge now. And what Digital Taxidermy said is they'll just refund you that pledge amount if you are chosen by Bob. So don't hold back. Go ahead and jump in, show your support for Digital Taxidermy. And please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my other videos that shows a lot of terrain for your favorite games. Stick around for the painting tutorial if you're interested in that. Otherwise, happy painting, happy printing. We'll see you next time. All right, so first thing I did was spray everything with this flat red primer. You can use any brand because they usually have this sort of rusty red kind of primer. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to use the salt method, and I want the primer to be this rusted out color. And then after you do all of the pieces, the reason why I spray prime everything first is because once I stick everything together, sometimes it's hard to get into all the cracks and crevices. So this is why I spray it first. Now I'm just gonna glue some pieces together, even though it's sort of interchangeable what you can do. This is just going to start out just with the pieces that are matching. And what's awesome with these wheels is that they actually turn. So just stick them in here and they print as one piece, but they can turn, which is awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue these on here. And I'm just using some super glue. So for most of these joints, you can just stick in a piece of filament, and I just clip it right after I stick it in, and it doesn't really fall out because it's tight enough to hold it in there. But for this bottom piece, the holes are bigger, and so you do have to do something to prevent it from falling out. So what I'm doing is just going to be using this wood burner, or you can use something else that is hot, and just press against this just to create sort of a head on there, like that, like a nail head almost. And then once it cools off, just pull it through like this, and then clip off a little bit, but leave some of it on there, like so, and then press that side as well, so that you're creating this rivet right here, and that'll prevent the filament from falling out. I do want to point out that these original pegs that hold the arm of the roller, I couldn't get it to fit, and so I had to reprint it and shrunk it down to 95% of original size to get it to fit through the hole. So just note that if you're printing out the roller. So I'm going to go ahead and actually respray just some of these spots with the primer and come back in to paint. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to salt the various prints, and what you need is some coarse salt. Kosher salt is what I have, just regular salt, and then just some cheap hairspray. So this was the cheapest one I could find, and relatively easy. And my general philosophy is just the lower portion of most machines and buildings is what is the most rusted. And so I'm actually going to want to get the salt sort of along the midline where it transitions from complete rust in the bottom to the paint that we're going to put on top. So in general, I focus the salt on those spots where it's more in general sort of along the middle, and then just a few pieces sort of up here. And I start off with this coarse salt first before I put the smaller stuff on. So you can just grab this hairspray and just spray sort of like this. Doesn't have to be that neat or anything like that. And so put that on, and as you can see, there's quite a bit on there. And then just shake this more coarse salt sort of over where you sprayed. And as you notice, not a lot of it is going to stick, but just a couple of pieces. That's okay. And if you want more than what's sticking, you can just respray it and stick more on. And as you can see, a lot of it is falling off, and that's why I have this container underneath to catch a lot of it. And then once you do that, then I grab the regular salt, and if you have a salt shaker, probably this would you can control it a little bit more than what I'm doing here. And again, just salting along that midline primarily. Putting some up there. And the more salt you put on, the more of the rust color is going to prevail. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. There. So I did that, and then gonna flip it over and do the other side as well. So really that's all there is to it. And then the buildings are gonna be exactly the same way as these vehicles. All right, so after all of the hairspray has dried and the salt is on there, I'm gonna go ahead and spray. And so I'm first gonna spray paint all of the vehicles with this orangish color because I want this to be a little bit of shading for the yellow. And yellow actually doesn't go on very well. So just by having this darker color, shade color first, will really help the yellow get on there. And most of the paints I'm using is Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Cover. And make sure you get the satin or matte version. And really what you want to do is just spray it at an angle. Don't get down underneath like this. Just spray it from above because, again, you want the rusted color still to be present and still to be seen. And so that's why we're doing a coat of this and just from above. So get it from all angles. And again, it's okay if some of the red is still showing, as that just shows the rust. So get all of the vehicles. You might need to do more than just one coat in order to get a satisfying color. Now we are, again, we're gonna do yellow over this, so it doesn't have to be super clean. And here I did spray this roller with silver, and that's why I have a piece of tape there, is because I want mostly that silver to be on there. I will use a brush to touch it up, but that was just a lot of silver to paint up. So that's what you want to do. All right, now that the orange is dry, I'm gonna go ahead and grab this. This is the ultra matte version of yellow, which I like a lot because it's super dull. So doing the same thing, just from above, and then leaving some of the orange as shading, so not even quite as much as what we did with the orange, because you want the orange to be showing through. And just rotate and go to the other side, hit it from all sides, like so. Make sure you get the hubcaps of the wheels. Alright, so now we are putting some silver on. I'm just using this Deco Art metallic silver, but you can use any silver that you want. And just pick random bits, pistons, whatever, just to color silver. And you'll notice that I still have the salt on, so I'm trying to keep that on just to mask that rusted color. But just go ahead and put on silver wherever you want. as a way of varying up some of the coloring. So there isn't a ton to do necessarily, so just be able to spot on where you want the silver to be, and this just provides some variation. Alright, so this is the fun part where we can finally get rid of all of the salt, and so all I do is just grab a old toothbrush, and I do want to wet it down a little bit like this, and then just start rubbing off the salt and knocking it off. And you'll notice that as the salt comes off, the rust color underneath will come forth, and sometimes I just like to use my fingernail also to get rid of the pieces like this. Just wash it every once in a while just to get some water there. And you just go at it like this. So it's a little bit of a tough angle for me, but this is essentially how it all goes down. And wherever you put a lot of salt, it's going to be more red and rusty, like so. And it's also to your advantage to even chip some of the paint, not even necessarily from the salt, but just using this toothbrush. So this is what it looks like once all the water is dried off, and I think it looks really good. It looks all worn down, and as you can see, some of the salt gives these white spotches, which I also like because it makes it look more corroded. Like you can see it a little bit better here on this building. See how all the white spots make it look more corroded? So I really feel like the salt method really works well in just making things seem weathered, and it's a relatively easy thing to do. And even on the spots where the salt didn't come off all the way, I think it's still fine to have that kind of texture because it looks like it's a buildup of corrosion. I mean, you can see it here. See how not all of the salt came off, and it just creates like a texture of metal corroding. So I think it actually looks pretty good that way. And again, you have those white spots from the salt because I intentionally didn't rinse off all of the salt just to get those effects. So this I think looks really good. If you wanted to, you can put a wash on here. I'm not going to do that just because I got to get these done quickly. And all I'm going to do is just paint these tires black. And I'm just using craft paint black for the tires here, also here. And pretty much that's it. I'm going to try to figure out what to do with these windows, maybe just make them blue as well. And then maybe some of these lights. But other than that, I really like how it turned out. I mean, look at that. It looks all corroded and used. So I just like my terrain to look more abused rather than super clean. You can see a close-up of this building as well, where you just have, I intentionally put more salt down here towards the bottom just so that there's more corrosion there. And painted this white, and just going to touch up and do some other paints here as well.